Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic Roundtable Show. This is episode 499. Yes, one episode to the big 500. I never thought I would get there. Just amazing that you've stayed with me, listeners and viewers, on this winding journey of WordPress. We've got a powerful panel, got a great special guest, a real friend of the show, Brian Jackson. He's coming back, former content manager at Kinster. He's joining us, and it should be a great show. So I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves. Let's start with my great co-host on my Thursday interview show. Adrian, would you like to quickly introduce yourself? Oh, you're muted.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adrian. I am the CEO of Groundhog and Mailhawk. We help small businesses launch their marketing funnels.
Yeah, I was being cruel because he's just finishing off his breakfast, so I thought I was just throwing him as number one. That's the kind of person I am, see. He was a bit nasty to me yesterday, actually. He was.
What are you talking about? I was not. That's unfair.
Right. Spencer, my friend Spencer, would you like to introduce?
You know what? Spencer Forman from Lunch Flows, but I want to reflect on the fact that I remember when you started this show, I think I was like one of your guests when you had a co-host, a different co-host, Bill Conrad or something.
Oh, Crazy Bill. Oh,
like
he was bonkers.
Show 3 or 4. I'm really shocked. Like, I got to give you a high five. If you make it to 500, you, I think, officially go into the like podcasting Hall of Fame or something, because this is like, I can't believe you're still here.
It's not. It's like that's the kind of word you use for a disease, isn't it? I don't believe
it's a high five and a roast.
I don't believe Cora's still here. You know,
we need the dais up here to roast you. But I mean, high five for all that. That's awesome, John.
Yeah, it's not. It's, really realistic. There's not many to get to 500, is there? I think the plugin
A lot of work.
A to Z got to 500. I'm not sure if did the Tavern get over 500? I think they did, didn't they? Before they stopped.
I mean, I know, like, I got to look at their numbers. There's a couple of people who've been around forever, but obviously, like Andrew Warner and Startups The Rest of Us, I think is probably in that range, right? I'm not sure.
Yeah,
so
I think
it's a big accomplishment to go 500.
Yeah, you go. And I got my young friend, Stephen. Stephen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Stephen Sauter with zipfish.io. We make WordPress fast by optimizing both the servers and the code that's on your site.
That's great. And we got our special guest, Brian Jackson. Brian, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm currently the co-founder of Forge Media. We develop a few premium WordPress plugins, and then I also publish right now a lot of WordPress content on a couple of different blogs as well.
Certainly do. It's normally very great stuff.
Brian, did you see, sorry to hijack, sometime at the end of the show, we could talk about that article we were talking about of yours, which is a great article last week about your experiences, but we were all wondering about a couple points, like you're never going to use WooCommerce again, bet. Maybe we can talk about that after the end of the show or something.
Sure, I try to stay transparent, so I don't mind.
All right.
Put some money on
this.
this.
Share more about that article, because I enjoyed writing that article. It was actually a lot of fun.
It was a good article, but we're gonna lure you. We're gonna lure you with a bet. Like, anybody seen Brian using WooCommerce? Anybody?
Yeah, what's going on with old Adam from WP Crafters, Spencer? Do you think he's fallen out with his Astra friends?
We were just discussing a couple of us separately. He had a video that I think came out yesterday, the day before, with that cadence theme, showing how there's a Gutenberg block that allows WooCommerce to sort of have a look and feel like a Shopify page. And he seems in this video to be very animated and excited. I won't speak for him, but he seems to be like revolutionary. And 2 things struck me as very unusual. Number one, he's in a business relationship with Sujay at Astra, and this would be directly contrary to be pumping cadence against his partner's Astra Pro. Number 2 is it's like a big letting air out of a bag, because it doesn't do anything. It's just a couple switches that turn on a bunch of different things on like a pre-made template. And I'm like, what are you getting so jazzed up about this? And the only explanation that when I discussed this, people said was that, like, he makes his money by referring people to affiliate links from his YouTube videos. So Cadence clearly has a nice affiliate program. Is the only thing I can imagine.
There we go. I just thought I'd ask you. I was just puzzled. Let's go into the show, folks. Let's start with a couple of our sponsors, and let's start with Kinster. Kinster's been my major sponsor for over 2 years. They've really supported the show. I'm very appreciative of their support. They host the WP-Tonic website. It's been faultless. I just don't have any problems almost all the time when I'm with Kinster. And what do you get either for yourself or for your clients? Well, if you've got a WooCommerce site, if you've got a learning management system, you need more power. And that's what you get from Kinster. They only host WordPress websites. They use the Google Cloud as their hosting medium, so you get the best performance possible. And basically their support is really good. When a couple of times when I've had the odd problem, well, I've spoken to the person and they've been able to deal with it, and they're not had to migrate it higher up. Normally the person that you started off with the conversation is the person that finishes the conversation with you. And basically you're not having to wait half hour, 40 minutes to get help. If that sounds interesting, and I think it should, go over to Kinster, have a look at their packages. I suggest you buy one. And the most important thing is tell them that you heard about them on the WP-Tonic show. Our next sponsor is Launchflows. Launchflows is an amazing product. You know, it's 2020, folks. We need modern funnels in WordPress. We need to compete with other systems, and that's what you get with Launchflows. With Launchflows, a free version of Animator, a free version of WooCommerce, you can build all sorts of landing pages, shopping cart pages, everything customized, layout the way you wanted. The possibilities are endless. So go over to Launchflows and you can use the coupon code WP-Tonic Rocks. I say that again, WP-Tonic Rocks, and you get 25% off the price. So into story one. Happy 17th WordPress. Yes, 17 years. And this is from Justin Tadlock from the Tavern. And what did you think of this one, Adrian?
Well, it's super exciting. I have not been around for the whole 17 years, but I'm doing my best to put a mark on it in the about the 6 years that I've been part of the community, and it's just super exciting. WordPress has a very, very, very long future ahead of it as well. You know, it's like 17-year-old, and in technology terms, times moves relatively quickly, and products obsolescence every single day. But WordPress has been able to stick around, and it's been able to iterate, it's been able to innovate. And I think with Gutenberg and, you know, themes probably going away in the next couple years, if not by the end of this year, and all of the advancements to Gutenberg and the block directory and all that stuff is going to push it just a little bit further in terms on the innovation scale.
Yeah, I totally agree with you to some extent. But I thought it was an amazing story from Zach yesterday from Gravity View about how he started his business. And he was so honest, wasn't he? And it was quite inspiring, really, wasn't it, Adrian?
Absolutely. And, you know, stories like that where businesses are able to feed off, because in the case of our interview yesterday, Zach Katz, founder of Gravity View, is offering a service specifically for the community of Gravity forums. And basically his story is like so many others of our stories, where a lot of us product developers currently on the call are able to feed off the massive community of WordPress. That community is just growing, which means that, you know, the future of capitalism in the WordPress industry is going to be super, it's going to be good, because as that community grows, we're going to have more customers, and we're going to be able to innovate and elevate the WordPress community as a whole together as well. So really, it's just, you know, good news all around for the future of WordPress. And it's been, you know, there's been a lot of changes in the 17 years, you know, coming from, you know, the original WordPress fork to where we are today. we're starting to lose kind of the, as Spencer puts it, the hippie granola mentality. That is slowly going away, and I think WordPress is becoming a monetarily incentivized community for the most part, in which case people are starting to realize that, hey, listen, if we're going to create businesses around WordPress and we are going to actually want to make money with WordPress, we have to invest money back into it. And I think that only spells good things for those of us who are also monetarily invested in the WordPress community already, myself with my businesses, Spencer with his, Steven, Brian, etc. And I think the shift in that direction is a good thing overall.
What do you reckon, Brian?
It was interesting because I was writing an article the other day, and I was kind of going back in the Wayback Time Machine to see like actually when I started using WordPress. And so for me, it was 2008. So I've been using WordPress for about 12 years. So I missed the first like 5 years there. I was doing like HTML hard coding websites before I discovered WordPress. But yeah, just to see where it's gone in the 12 years. I mean, when I did the first site, like it was just like a blog roll and just to start blogging. Because at the time, that's essentially what WordPress was. It was just a blogging platform at that time. And just to see where it is now, and, you know, with my brother and I actually making WordPress plugins, and that's actually, for the most part, how we're making our living now. Just, I put in the article I wrote actually, like and then working at Kinsta too is WordPress focused. So like most of my career I have to thank for WordPress. Otherwise I'd be doing some totally other thing. I came from an IT background, and I got out of that because I knew I was going to kill myself before I got to 60 if I was doing that. It's just, yeah. And so if it wasn't for WordPress, I'd probably be hating myself, trying to fix people's computers, still stuck in a job I didn't like. So yeah, it's really cool to see different businesses. I think the blocks, like Adrian touched on, is really exciting. I just converted all my sites to generate blocks, which is a new thing from Tom, who's the developer of GeneratePress. And so all my sites are completely block based now. And I'm starting to really love blocks. And at first I was kind of with the crowd saying I hated blocks. I don't get this Gutenberg thing. Like, this is stupid.
They're growing on me.
But yeah, they are really growing on me, for sure as well. And yeah, I can just see the potential. And Hero Themes is another kind of product, WordPress development company that I really like and use some of their products, but they just launched a table of contents plugin, but it's completely block based. And it's literally like what a table of contents plugin should be if you're using blocks. Like it automatically generates the headers. You can actually click hide or view a header. It utilizes block to the fullest. And so to see developers kind of taking advantage of blocks and rolling with it to make people's lives easier, it's just actually really, really cool, I think.
That's great. Over to you, Stephen.
It was a really fun article. I love the comparison of like WordPress being 17 years old and a 17-year-old kind of like figuring out life, because we're kind of like in this really fun new place in WordPress with the whole block stuff where there's a lot of figuring out that's happening and a lot of things that are like up in the air, but things that are being nailed down at the same time. And like when I would think back when I was like 17 years old trying to figure out, you know, what I wanted to do with my life, I don't know.
Do I go to college? Do I not go to college?
Exactly. Like which direction to go? Like I like these things and I still like those things. So like there's like these trends, but like how is it all going to play out? Like we're seeing it like, you know, happen before our eyes. And you know, starting off with like hating blocks, and now blocks feels like a usable thing finally, but like it still doesn't have as many features as one would want. So people are still being pushed to page builders at times, and like just watching this whole thing unfold feels like a 17-year-old. So like that analogy just like I don't really hit home was fun.
You know what? It's kind of like with the, because it's always like been the struggle between open source and, hey, listen, we got to make money on this thing. So it's almost like a 17-year-old being like, hey, listen, I really just want to go hang out with my friends and like surf by the beach. But all of a sudden now I have families to support because, I got in bed with the wrong person. So it's almost like, hey, listen, there's a huge community that, we're responsible for at this point, and what can we do in order to support them? And trying to say, but I still want to go hang out with my friends by the beach and eat granola and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's a fun space to see what's going to happen, what's going to shake out. Like, it's exciting.
What do you reckon, Spencer?
I mean, I started in 2006. I don't know what happened from 3 to 5, but I remember the whole B2 story where it came from, and it was probably early days. By 6, it was fully formed. But you reminded me with Adrian talking about gravity view. Some of the things that I loved about the early days of WordPress, which still sort of exist, are like the famous gravity view video that Zach no longer has on the homepage.
We talked about that yesterday.
Right, the musical one, which it's buried in the internet somewhere, but that thing is classic. And those
it's brilliant.
Those campy things were. You could get away with a lot more. You can still do fun stuff. I like to think that we still do fun stuff, but with the popularity in the 37.62547% of the internet, whatever that means, comes a level of, like everything else, you need to change your visibility methods. You could be the only one doing that, and all of a sudden everybody knew you. That's why we have all those fun stories of Matt showing up to argue with Chris Pearson. That doesn't happen as much anymore, because if there's tens of millions of people doing stuff, you're not going to get attention in the same way, unless it's a notorious way, like hosting an orgy party at a WordPress camp or something. So I would say where we're at now going forward is sort of, for those of us for 10, 12, 15 years or something being around, like, we can reflect upon where it's come from, where it started, but at the same time, there's going to have to be like a new layer of what are the new kind of things you can do that are unique. And I mean, I look forward to that. I'm not saying it in a nostalgic, sad way. I'm saying it in a way that, like, now it's a whole different thing where you have millions of eyeballs on you. Before, you had hundreds of eyeballs on you.
There's a maturity there, and you have to be, the next level to like garner that attention. You can't just do something crazy and off the wall.
I mean, like, I remember, because I could tell all these grandfather stories. I remember the first time I ever heard of Gary Vaynerchuk, for God's sake, right? And like, that doesn't seem that long ago, but at the time he was doing stuff that he was the only one doing it in a world where there wasn't that many people doing stuff in that space anyway. And now that kind of shenanigans, a lot of people could copy, but it just wouldn't work the same way. So the reinvention process gets me excited, because it doesn't really go beyond a certain point until it's saturated. Once it's saturated, you can't do in that space the same. You have to move to the left and start back at the bottom in the clear zone and do something different. And we'll see how that pans out. For example, my bet is somebody's going to take Elementor and run with it and make a new platform. And then it's going to be like, okay, the WordPress thing here and then the WordPress Elementor thing there. If that should happen, now there's a lot of forests that was cut down in this clear space, and see what happens.
Right. On to story 2. Started to hate blogging. Why? And it's from WP Blog Designer. What did you think of this one, Brian?
I mean, I can agree. I agree with some of it, and I don't agree with other parts of it. So like the writer's block.
I selected this just for you, Brian.
The writer's block thing, I have never had that problem. My Trello board has like 700 topics I want to write about if I had time. So that one I've never had a problem with. But there's other things in this article that he talked about, like not taking a break. You can really get like caught up in the workflow of like, you see all these other people publishing all this great content now, especially nowadays, as opposed to like 5 years ago. And so like, it means you just have to constantly be pushing out amazing content. And especially if you're like just a single person, like it can be exhausting. I mean, just, that you almost have to, for me, I try to just shut everybody else out and write the article I want to write based on, the things I've learned throughout the last 12 years using WordPress. And that's a lot less stressful way of doing it, I think. Otherwise, if you're constantly comparing yourself, it's just gonna, it's a mental drain at that point. But he also, yeah, this one part about there's so much to do is another thing that I can agree with. And he mentioned finding tools kind of like to speed up your workflow. I think that is important. Like anywhere you can save like 10 minutes a day at this point, and you know, it's helpful. I'm always looking for new tools to like shave off workflows and little things I'm just constantly doing every single day. But yeah, it's a good, I related with a lot of it, but I disagree with some of it too. So I enjoyed reading it though. This was actually one of the articles of the whole thing that I read the entire thing. So.
Yeah, it wasn't bad, was it? It was worth reading to some extent, wasn't it? I thought you would like it. So what did you reckon about it, Spencer?
This is one of those topics that I think will dovetail into what I just said. Blogging, when it first started out as a novelty, was a way to get attention. What I would propose to people who are interested in becoming YouTubers or bloggers is, why are you doing it? Unless you can directly attach it to building an audience of prospects, I don't think you should blog. I don't think you should make videos, because there is no easy path in a saturated world of blogging and YouTube videos for anybody to make up for the time it will take. It's just a factual statement. If at the end of your blog, you're offering a consultancy service or a pain point solution or a product or an ebook or something, you could theoretically justify your prospecting. And I'm not saying people shouldn't give away this stuff for free, because I do that all the time. But I give away my stuff for free because it's at least tangentially related to my credibility as an expert, an authority, a product, or a service. And I think that's the unfortunate reality of what we just talked about, which is in a world that has matured with online stuff, you can't raise your hand in a billion-person world and get attention. And this is essentially just a way of raising your hand. In the same way, like trying to make YouTube videos for money, be prepared like that young lady a couple of weeks ago who was complaining that I only got paid $1,600 for 1 million views. Well, because there's a trillion people just like you making videos. So that is my opinion on it, which is, I don't blame this. I think it's a bot who wrote this anyway, but like, I don't blame this person, Infotech or something. They're not even putting their own name on it, why they said it, but it's
No. It's put his name on it. I just didn't.
I don't see the name. Where's the name?
I think it was named.
At the bottom, it says, this is another thing I don't like. Admin, Solwyn Infotech is a fast-growing WordPress web development company. Well, here's a thought. Maybe put your face and real name on it so that people think it's a real person, and then it would be like, oh, I know that guy, like Brian Jackson does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brian, do you feel like it's a lot harder to break through content stuff today like than it was like 5 years ago? Or I don't know how long you've been blogging for, but like what does the landscape look like with so much more being published by companies that are trying to sell products and stuff like that?
Was that directed to me?
Yeah.
Or oh yeah, okay. I mean, it's funny because what he was just talking on too, people ask me nowadays, like, should I start a blog for my company? And actually my first answer now is no, don't start a blog. And I would have said the opposite like 5 years ago. Like I would have said like, definitely start a blog, pushing out content. But nowadays, I think you have to be more creative. Like he was saying, it's just so saturated that if you're just starting a blog from scratch today, oh my God, you got to have 2 years before anything's going to happen almost. It's going to just take a crap ton of work or a lot of money to find the right writers. There's ways you can fast track stuff. But yeah, it's just super, super hard today. And standing, like he also mentioned, is standing out from the crowd, I think is the hardest way. Like you can't just, 5 years ago, I would write something, it'd be on the first page of Google, like within days. And now like, you almost have to like publish it. I keep adding content as I think of things, updating it, and like 6 months to 8 months down the road that I might have it somewhere where I'm actually happy with. So it's completely different than it was before. I don't think, I think you can still be successful with content marketing. Obviously content marketing is a huge part of my strategy still, but again, I have stuff that's, I built for years I'm kind of building off of. So it's hard to compare it to someone just starting, right from scratch. If it was me, I would definitely, I'm not starting any new blogs anytime soon. I don't ever want to ever again. So yeah, it's a lot of work.
What do you reckon, Adrian?
If you're a product or a services company and you're thinking, I need a content marketing strategy, you only need 3 articles because your lead generation is going to happen on the merits of your service and not necessarily your content, because it's so difficult to get content viewed, that your content in your blog or your 3 articles or whatever are going to act as authority builders and providing valuable insight into how your service or product actually works. That's what we do on our blog. I'm a terrible content writer. I'm really good at code and I'm really good at documentation and landing pages. But when it comes to writing content, they're filled with grammar errors and it's just awful. I have to have them edited or else they don't go out. But I just wrote the 3, and it's all they do is they target our customer segments. How does Groundhog work for agencies, or how to build whatever strategy that you need in order to get started with Groundhog. And we have those 3 content pieces. They build authority, they build credibility, and then they inevitably get someone to upgrade. But they get there based on the merits of the product and the service, whatever advertising that we're doing at the moment. But if you're a product and service and you don't have a blog yet, don't start one. Get the leads on the merits of your service. Use your content strategy to nurture them and to educate them, not necessarily to get them in the door.
Rightio. Thanks for that. We're going to go for our breaks, listeners and viewers, and we'll be back with some more stories back in a moment. Coming back, we've had a good discussion in the first half. I've got some better stories, I think, for the second half, I think. It should be interesting. On to story 3. Should WordPress provide an API for third-party editors? Another good story from Justin Tadlock. I think he's firing all engines now. What do you reckon about this one, Spencer?
In a world where Matt Mullenweg sells the company. No, this is a political problem. I feel like I'm channeling the ghost of
what your background image of him? Get me.
I feel like I'm channeling the ghost of our previous guest hosts and stuff here. But the idea is, in an ideal world, this political problem wouldn't exist, like Morton would say. It's not a problem of whether they could do it. It's a problem of the company just spent $6 million or $4 million to buy some second company that's doing some kind of JavaScripty thing here and there, and yet at the same time isn't paying a salary for sort of executives to be in charge of fixing things like the Gutenberg look and feel, or isn't in charge of cohesifying, if that's a word, the WooCommerce experience. So how and where are they going to spend the energy to build an API that would do nothing more than poke a huge hole in the Jetpack dam that they're trying to build to force everybody into using Gutenberg blocks and the Woo payment and everything else? It isn't going to happen. It's a nice talk. Now, again, with the tavern, you must always scroll down to the comments. And you'll notice there's a comment in here by Justin. Justin, is Matt going to come and spank your tushy about writing this article? And he says, no, I'm going to be okay. And then it says, oh, Matt, is this going to be something that is a good idea? What are you wasting your time for? And he has to justify why he's saying, I hope all the discussions we hear have a good use of time. Otherwise, what are we doing? So the point is, everybody, even in the comments, I think feels similarly, which is, why are we hypothesizing about all these theoretical political problems when there is an emperor at the top making it clear that he's taking this company in another direction? And all right, so that's it. I don't want to be cynical because I like the fact that Justin has got 2 articles here today we talked about, and neither one of them was an infomercial. But at the same time, I do feel like it's almost a little bit of a fairy tale conversation of why not just focus the energy on the companies that are actually doing something that's tangibly different.
Okay. What do you reckon, Brian?
I mean, I kind of agree. I don't think this is ever going to happen, or it is kind of a fairy tale. But touching on the topic where he mentioned iceberg in there, I actually gave that a play the other day. It's actually kind of really cool. While I said I love blocks, I still don't like the writing experience. And so I think even Justin said this at the end, I actually tend to do a bulk of my writing in like Bear app, which is like a little app for writing that I really enjoy. So, and then pasting it back into the block editor. So, would this ever happen? Probably not. But I would love to see the writing experience get better with the current editor. I just think, while I love the blocks, I feel like if you compare it to the classic editor where you had like literally no interruptions, just one big thing where you could write, I much rather prefer that for writing than I do hitting enter, new block, hitting enter, new block, new paragraph for writing. It's really disruptive. And that's why I tend to write with my Bear app, or I was using the Iceberg thing, and it's like basically turns the block editor into a markdown editor. It's the best way to describe it. And you don't really see the blocks. And I actually had a lot of fun writing with it. I might actually start using it more.
Well, I just use Google Docs, and because they got their voice,
and that's another way.
Their voice recognition software, because obviously I've got my bit of dyslexia.
I mean, isn't the devil in those details? Like if you're writing a long form article, or in my case, I don't like to do that at all. Luke here in our company does that, but I like to do videos. But if I'm doing something that, let's say, is a multiple posting scenario with videos otherwise, I tend to just, like John, I just go write the text in something that's made for it, like a word processor, and then paste it. And then I do the other, maybe ACF or something, to do a custom post editor, put the video here, put the thing here. And so what I'm saying is, isn't it true like that this is sort of all beside the point anyway? Because if you do a long form blog, I challenge anybody to say that the editor in WordPress is the best place to do that regardless. Just go do the text elsewhere, get the video content, get the ad links, and then you just compile them in WordPress. I think that's realistic.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, that's the perfect reason why this API will never exist, is because everybody has their own workflow with like their team or themselves. They have their own apps that they want to use. And I think even if you had an API, everybody has their little niches that they had, how they do things, that at the end of the day, your API is only going to integrate with a handful of those things. And so people are going to be left in copy and pasting back into the editor, regardless of what you do. And so why build something that people have solved in better ways, maybe? I mean, I guess you could argue if it's better or not, but I know very few people that write in WordPress, and I don't think an API would actually change people's workflow that much.
I agree with you there. What do you reckon, Adrian?
I actually thought it was a unique idea. This would allow people using, for example, in the page editor framework, not necessarily for posts, but for pages, if you wanted to do all of your page editing like exclusively, let's say something like Elementor, then instead of clicking on edit page, then going through clicking the button, the edit with Elementor button, it would be just like an overwritten completely. As soon as you edit page, it loads up the editor, and that also provide them the ability to add their own editing UI for stuff like page title, excerpt, featured image, etc. The list goes on. And you could just have that full page editing experience in one area rather than having the fragmented experience, because every time I make a page, I have to do all of the metadata stuff in the block editor for the page, and then click on the edit with Elementor button to do the actual page design. And that's a fragmented experience. So this kind of thing could seriously improve the workflow for pages that are like designed with landing page editors like Elementor, Beaver Builder, Brizzy, etc. The list goes on. And I think that this kind of introduction would make that experience better. I love blocks, and I love the thing for posts and all of that stuff. It's not, as everybody else always says, it's not necessarily ready to do like the full like landing page editor experience with all of like the animations and all of like the cool stuff that you can do with Elementor or Beaver Builder or anything like that. So an introduction of this sort of feature for pages and other custom post types, I think, would be rather valuable for the workflow aspect until like Gutenberg gets there.
Let's go on to story 4. Responsive web design turns 10. There's a lot of anniversaries in this episode, isn't there? What did you reckon about this one, Stephen?
I feel like responsive web design is like a beautiful, great thing, but also like the bane of my existence when I was building, custom web apps and stuff for people. I've always said that if I was a dictator, I would like limit the screen sizes to like 3, like a tablet, a desktop, and a phone. And like, that's all my nation would ever get. And so as a developer, you just build for 3 sizes and that's all. It seems like there's always like a screen size that falls outside of what you had initially anticipated when you were like testing all of your responsive stuff.
Like the huge Galaxy Note that's like halfway in between tablet and phone. It's like, who the hell's I thought this was a great idea?
Yeah, exactly. And like back in the day when Apple only had like 1 or 2 screen sizes, right? You could like say, okay, somebody in my audience, I just need to test on these and these devices and I'm good. But today it's like all over the place. So like the need for responsive stuff becomes even greater. But as people are getting into 4K or 8K monitors, like it's just getting more and more challenging. And so it's cool to see that over 10 years, how much it's like evolved and all the different frameworks that have come out to help support responsive web design, whether it's like Tailwinds or Bootstrap or all these things that kind of make it a little bit easier. Still, I think it's something that we're still struggling with and will always be struggling with until the day we die.
Do you actually think, Spencer, the actual idea is in some ways flawed in a way? Because it's impossible, really, because you've got so many different screen sizes now that, you know, it's the same reason why I think when Microsoft had this idea that they could have one interface for all types of devices, mobile phone, tablet, desktop, and it was going to be Windows 8, and they're going to have this unified interface. Fundamentally, it imploded, didn't it? And it didn't end up very well, did it?
I think it was a necessary, I don't even want to call it come out. It was a necessary advancement for the transition, because when we first started out, everybody had a 640 by 480 monitor. Maybe it was green screen or amber. Then it went color, but nobody had anything other than a CRT. Maybe it was, I think it was 13 or 15 inches. Then it went to 17 and 19 and, you know, got bigger, but it was still the same thing, just larger stuff. When you went to mobile devices first, you really needed this because you can't take the content from a landscape big monitor and shove it into a portrait mode phone, because, you know, the columns would be so thin that everybody it would just be 1 letter wide stuff. And so I actually appreciated when this concept first came live, how it, you know, could make the shift and scale and everything else. But I think, as everybody here would say, and Stephen specifically said, that the compromise was, you know, how many buckets are you going to have? Are you going to do literally, right, media queries times 100, or just pick 3 and tell that person with the Galaxy, turn your thing sideways, or vice versa? So I think that's the world we live in now. But what I see happening, and we've discussed so many times, is when it moves to a browser responsive scenario, like one of the JavaScript or jQuery front ends, or it moves to a voice centric thing, or in the future, holographic websites in our glasses or something, all of this will go away as a conversation, just like I'm sure wagon wheel makers had all their complaints about oak versus maple, and then ta-da, the rubber wheel comes along, it's all over. So, you know, it's just a transition.
Yeah, I just kind of, I think you just have to take it so far, depending on the budget and what the client wants. But I think there's kind of certain points where we try and meet that's in our agreements with clients. And then if they want, you know, they've got other requirements, they have to pay for it, you know.
I mean, I think that's the
foundation. You want other requirements, you have to pay.
I mean, that goes back to the economy we're in right now, which is really traditional of, I heard the term that makes sense. We are really, most of us, even if we code, we're plumbers. That is to say, we have a lot of ready-made components, and the expertise is knowing which components to plumb together. And it could be like the newest, coolest thing came along. That's far different than the early days of WordPress, where we were really all coding. Making a pretty website really did involve learning HTML, CSS, PHP, and so forth. And so now you'd be on a fool's errand. And I read this also in another article about how Facebook's and other big companies are changing. Their software engineer teams are no longer necessary. Why? Because in the early days, they made their own proprietary libraries for everything. Today, there's already pre-made libraries that are perfected, and most of these larger companies are moving to just plumbing together those existing libraries. And I think as time goes on, the AI and the software itself will start even doing this bit of it. Like, you'll just tell it some instructions. I want to make this. And the software will know to put together various things and spit it out. And while that will eliminate some jobs, I think it will shift the human part to why are you doing this anyways, which is the relationship building, the marketing part, let's enjoy our 12 hours of leisure every day.
Right, on to the next story then. Amazon gave TV stations coronavirus propaganda and some aired it. Oh my God, fathers. What do you reckon about this one, Adrian?
Don't start with me.
All right, let's go.
I was just going to say, I'm glad he didn't start with me.
Well, let's start.
Start with Spencer.
Start with Spencer then. Go on, Spencer.
First, I was reading this, I was thinking like Amazon gave TV stations herpes or something, but instead it's coronavirus. The whole point is, hello. Like, I don't want to shift to politics, but Twitter's move this week of finally being bold enough to put like this may require you to read some more about this tweet kind of things, right? That is a sign of things to come, because
never.
Everybody has to be completely, like an ostrich head in the sand, to not realize that everything they read today has to have a political or a financial motive behind it. It just doesn't otherwise get attention. So this is not surprising, and whether it's nefarious or accidental, it's definitely a motive that's being pursued by the powers that be. And I think it falls in line with the other things that, while I love Amazon, I do find the paradox of their behavior odd. They are the #1 company. He is the richest man in the world. He doesn't need to be such a douchebag, or the company doesn't have to act like a Walmart. They could be a leader in saying, hey, we own this world now, and we're going to use it. Like, we'll take 10% off the top and still be the best.
I just don't understand it. He's just a Bond villain. It's so obvious. He's come out of a Bond film, hasn't he? He dresses 20 years too younger for himself, and basically he wants to go into the stars.
President Obama said why this happened. Obama said one time after his presidency, why is it that politics and all these things act the way they do? And my friend who's a psychologist said a similar thing, which I think to me makes it an interesting thought. The same behavior that happens at like high school for people who want to be on student council or president of the chess club or the captain of the football team, that behavior never changes the higher up you go into the politics or the corporate world. And Jeff Bezos, whatever his motives may be, we saw his origin, super smart nerd that came up from the bottom. And I guess he's entitled to flex his actual and physical and monetary muscles now. And maybe he's thumbing his nose at all the things that he felt like he got slighted on in the past. But there are other people who come up and end up doing the opposite. They come from really hard situations. They use all their money for good. And I don't know, a Keanu Reeves type of character. So it is a really interesting passion play when you look at our society, how certain people with money, they say amplifies your natural tendencies. And I think we're seeing this through the corporate CEO suite and such of these various companies. They're doing weird stuff.
But here's the issue that I had with that article, is that it makes Amazon the bad person, where like this happens all the time. PR people put out press releases and videos and talking points to news media all the time. Like, really what we should be pissed off is at the news media for just like grabbing this stuff and using it and not telling people about it or not investigating it themselves. Like, that's like, this article frames it like, oh, Amazon's this terrible person. It's like, no, like, we should expect more from our news media than just to grab whatever packet some PR department sent them and just run it on the air without doing any sort of investigation. And maybe it was all right, and maybe they did do investigation. As long as what they said was true, okay. But like, it's still them regurgitating these points, and there was nothing that, I don't know. I was just disappointed with the media. Amazon can do what Amazon wants, but I expect more from our media than that.
It's that 24-hour news cycle, that created the problem. Back in the day with corporate news, there was 3 channels on 2 times a day, 2 newspapers a day, and you had a trusted figurehead, like a Walter Cronkite. Now with the 24-hour news cycle, I've seen lots of examples where you see the one story and then they do this same thing with a grid of 100 stations, and they're literally reading the same thing. And that's because the news director is being paid to keep filling the space so that advertisers have something to advertise against.
I only watch Fox myself.
Exactly right. But that's the unfortunate reality of our, like, I do fondly remember when you turned on the TV and it was not constantly 800 different channels talking about the same topic.
I believe in my president, so I watch Fox all the time. So there we go. On to the next one. What's it? Number 6. Best plugins to turn your WP website into a mobile app. I've had a couple of people ask me about this. Kind of recently, it kind of dies down and it rears its head. Can't we turn this into an app easily? You're shaking your head, Stephen. What did you reckon about this advert? And
yeah, I have like maybe three thoughts on this. One, like, it brings up the debate, like, what about progressive web apps where, like, you're not in the app store, but you can, install things on the phone. But we have, like, issues with that, with, like, Apple not supporting some stuff and Google supporting some other stuff and some integration issues with that. And then, like, just app fatigue. I feel like there are people that just don't want to download one more app to do something. And if you look at the trend, I think we're heading into this area where everything's going to be more progressive web apps, but we're not there yet. So what do you do in the meantime? Do you publish your app to an app store? Do you create like a little, web wrapper around everything? Because essentially that's what this is, right? It's just like a glorified website of your, just loading in content. So, like, do you do that, or do you go this progressive web app, which isn't quite fully baked, isn't quite fully there yet? We're kind of in this weird in-between state. And so, like, whenever you're in that, it's always really hard to know. Like, do you build an app? Do you use a plugin to really quickly create an app? Do you go this progressive web app route? I think it really depends on what industry you're in. But from my point of view, I am tired of having to download people's apps to do stuff. So
always did think it was a bonkers idea, but there we go. Adrian, you got something to say?
Back about a year and a half ago, when I first hired my first developer, I'm like, we need an app for our CRM so that they can manage everything from the phone, right?
They don't.
That was a 3-month investment, full time for him.
Was it?
Yeah. And
I bet that was a journey into the Amazon jungle, wasn't it?
Yeah. And at the end of it, I'm like, I read an article from Hotjar. And Hotjar said, you know what we need? We need an app. And then they went through like a 2-year development cycle for this app and then released it, and nobody wanted it. So I'm like, oh. So then I asked my audience, like, if we made an app, would you use it? And they got that was like zero interest. And I'm like, well, shit. I've now invested 3 months' salary into a product that nobody wanted.
Well, at least you didn't spend $5,000 on a AdWords campaign.
Yeah. So before you go asking yourself, for your course site or your blog or whatever, ask yourself, does my audience want an app from me? You should ask them, because they'll tell you. And if the answer is no, then don't invest 3 months in valuable resources going down that road, because it's a painful and it's an expensive one. And I learned something during that period of time. And I have been able to make vastly superior use of the resources at my disposal since then, besides going down like the app road for something that nobody really wanted, nobody really needed, and no one was ever going to use.
Here we go. What do you reckon?
That was my lesson on the app front.
What do you reckon, Brian?
I have a couple opinions on this. So first off, I think
go on, Brian, go for it.
I think it matters what it is. So like, for something like Spotify, I want an app. Like, I'm going to take the time, I'm going to go download an app. But it's something like a content website. Like, you have to, like Steven was saying, I feel like you're kind of caught in between right now. Like, do you do a responsive web? Do you still piggyback off the responsive web design for the next 5 years until the progressive web apps maybe are further? Do you utilize AMP, Google AMP more? I'm not a fan of AMP. Don't mind admitting that. And yeah, I actually really liked Adrian's answer of like, just ask them and they will tell you. Because before working at Kinsta, I worked like agencies and doing PPC and stuff like that. And I can't tell you how many times we had business owners come to us saying, we need an app. And then like us as the marketing agency and doing the development and stuff would be like, why do you need the app? And they're like, oh, well, we just need the app. Like that was their edge.
If we have the app, people will use it and it will make us money.
Exactly.
But it doesn't necessarily happen in that order.
Exactly. Yeah. They just think because people have iPhones and things that they're literally going to go and install their app. And that's just not the case. And then you end up, similar like Adrian said, that you invest money into it, you waste time, and then nobody ends up using it. And then you're really back to, let's just piggyback off of responsive web design again, instead of doing the app. So yeah, I think it matters.
Actually, Flash would answer all these problems, Brian. If we go back to Flash.
Oh, Flash. Oh, I'm glad we're out of that
off as
era.
action scripter.
I was just flying on American Airlines, and you still need to use Flash enabled to use their like video player thing. It's like Chrome's like getting rid of that, like coming right down the pike. So I don't know what I'm going to do if I keep flying American. Hopefully they fix that.
Flying. What was flying? Oh yeah, I remember flying. That was that thing where we used to go for one.
The good old days.
Those good old days before you just wouldn't choke to death on the virus. What do you reckon, Spencer?
I mean, I think you guys touched on the point. I actually had this conversation just yesterday. I think most people who aren't doing this for a regular living don't even understand that in an HTML5 world, the only types of things that even need to be an app would be something like Map My Ride or Heartbeat Monitor, something that you can't accomplish with a web browser website. Otherwise, you literally are putting lipstick on a pig. I mean, you're just taking your website and putting a wrapper on it so somebody has to go and download a thing that lets them look at the browser by pushing a button. Now, what's interesting too is that when you ask people not only whether they want it or need it, but what they would do with it, nobody wants to be locked to one device. Why? Because sure, I have an iPhone, but I got maybe an iPad and I got my desktop, I got my laptop, I got my kid's phone. If you have an app, it's like you might be in a place where you can't actually use the device that had the app downloaded. Whereas if you just tell people, go to the website, that could be done from anywhere at any time. And I think that's the part that now the things have shifted the other way. You absolutely need app for an Android or an Apple if it's something that can't be done in a browser. If it can be done in a browser, just explain to people how the web works and go, oh, what you want is a mobile responsive website, which everything is now. Ta-da. And
yeah, and like what you were saying do you want to also develop for Android? And for then you have to have multiple apps at that point. So you're going down a rabbit hole that's kind of pointless.
And it's hard, by the way. I mean, I did have something put in the App Store in the early days, and it's a super duper pain in the ass, not only to get in there and the cost, but also when you want to update and you want to keep it maintained, you have to actually maintain that on a different system than, I'll just log into my browser and change the stuff. So,
oh dear, painful to say the least. There we go. I think in Silicon Valley, if it's a website, we don't want that. There's literally there was a stage where it had to be an app if you wanted to get, you wanted to get
your VC money, you had to have an app.
It had to be an app, didn't it? It had to be an app, and after time,
or even a desktop version now, like with let's say Slack or Stripe or Skype or any of those things. You can do the browser, but the desktop app is really more efficient because they're specialized. But if I want to browse Medium or something like that, for God's sake, I mean, first I wouldn't go there, but I'm not browsing it on the app.
The difference comes in because when you're looking at a browser, like on the back end, it's what we call stateless. You load the page and it's done loading. On apps and desktop applications and mobile apps, the back end is constantly processing new information and can update the UI and provide new information without you having to refresh the page, which is what happens on a browser when you want the newest information. You have to go through that refresh process. If your application doesn't require any sort of back end processing going on in the background, and there's no new constant information like chat bubbles or anything going on, then just put it in a browser because it's just static information and no one needs to download an app to see that.
Yeah, it's funny how things work out. All right, let's go on to our recommendations of the week, and I've got one. It's a really interesting UX design sort the mess, which is the back end of WordPress. It's called Organized WP. I bought it and I've been trying it out, and I really like it. So, if you want to sort out the back end of your WordPress websites for yourself or for clients, go over to Organized WP, and comes from the guy at WP Search, and we're interviewing him, Jonathan, another Jonathan, in the next couple of weeks. Me and Adrian will be interviewing him. So So Adrian, have you got a recommendation?
Absolutely, I do. On Monday, Mailhawk, which is our brand new transactional email service specialized for WordPress, swooped in on Monday, and it's a service where you can hook it up to your site in just a few clicks. We provide DKIM and SPF domain validation and the whole shebang. And we're really focused on making sure that we're servicing WordPress transactional emails, stuff like password reset emails, WooCommerce payment receipts, Lifter LMS notifications, the whole, and anything coming from Groundhog, my other product. We're really focusing on making sure that those get the best deliverability versus something using like SES or SendGrid, where they're more concerned about like a generic deliverability. We're really focused on the WordPress specific notifications and stuff like that. So that's at mailhawk.io, and you can go check that out.
Sounds fantastic. Spencer, got anything you want to recommend to listeners and viewers?
Indeed, because WooCommerce is fundamental to most of what we do and our clients do in some way. The 4.0 and thereafter have been really, really good for a lot of things, but along with it came the strategy to try to slip in the Trojan horse of a lot of other stuff you don't need and the onboarding. And along with that, many people got frustrated, and I myself had complained about it. So somebody wrote a plugin called Disable WooCommerce Bloat. And
God!
It's essentially
we're gonna make sure this is all in the chat. Gotta get that. Oh my God!
It's essentially the classic editor plugin, which disables Gutenberg for the 5 million plus people that have done that. It's essentially the same thing, but for WooCommerce, which is nice try, automatic. Not interested in the other 10 things that you threw in on the mix when I really wanted just the WooCommerce, which is a sad reflection upon how misaligned the management is at Automatic or at WooCommerce's team with what people really would pay for gladly, which is not this. So anyway, I tried it. The one thing that I'm not saying it's perfect, but the one thing that it does that I would maybe say you could get around is it also disables this feature called customers, which if they had implemented it properly would be awesome. But you may not notice this, but when you go into WooCommerce now 4.0, it has a tab called customers. If you were, again, using it properly when you went there, you could click on the customer and do stuff with it. Instead, it doesn't let you do anything with it. It only lets you click on the name and then go to the profile. It doesn't let you, for example, delete this person or edit them. It's just like a bridge to something else, which is unnecessary. But those things are what eliminates the marketing tab, the customers tab, all the other shenanigans that are added on and so forth. So check it out.
Oh, please put all this into chat, though, panel.
Yeah, it's in there
put your
right
recommendations in chat. Steve, you got anything?
My recommendation is Mammoth Docs Converter, which is one of the best plugins that I've used to convert like Google Docs into WordPress posts. So if you just export a Google Doc as a docs, it'll like import all the photos, upload it, kind of strip out all the styling tags that normally come along with Google Docs. So if anybody's looking to do that, I recommend that plugin.
No, sounds fantastic. And Brian, have you got anything you want to recommend? And you can recommend your own products, Brian. We'll let you.
I was going to say I have a shameless plug I was going to put in there. We just released our social media plugin for WordPress.
Right.
But we developed it from the ground up based on performance. So we tried to do it a little differently than everyone else has. And so far the feedback has been really well. It's novashare.io. You can go check it out. And then the two other things I've been using that I think people should check out is Generate Blocks is one really cool new thing. And then the Heroic Table of Contents, which is the table of contents, but actually based on the block editor. So that's another cool one.
All right. So put all that into chat. And you want to ask Brian a question, don't you, Spencer, about WooCommerce, don't you?
Well, we were just tongue in cheek because we really enjoyed the article. But the one thing that stood out, maybe besides the PayPal conversation, it was big block letters. I will never use WooCommerce again, and I'm willing to put a gentleman's bet on the table. I'll put up $50 if anybody catches Brian Jackson using WooCommerce. Anybody want to throw in? Because I think it's pretty hard to avoid the gravitational pull of that black hole. I mean, I love EDD for various reasons, but it's not WooCommerce. And I challenge you to stick with that. Or here's your last chance to get out on it. Retract that.
I don't see myself ever going back. I think a couple reasons is because I've seen the nightmares from the hosting side with WooCommerce. I mean, it's a heavier thing. Like you're going to have more problems with things like that. But I don't know.
I'm with Brian. WooCommerce is a pig from a resources standpoint, from a development standpoint, from so many things. And EDD for developers like Brian and I is just so much more of a pleasant experience to set up and integrate with, and to just really get the checkout experience that we want.
Yeah, you can definitely say I'm a EDD fanboy.
I mean, the differentiator is if you are a developer of software, 100%. For WP Fusion, it's using EDD as well. If you're selling software, EDD is a full package of everything you need. But for everything else, I mean, where are you going to go? I don't know. It's not going to happen. So I would challenge both you guys. I'm putting the bounty on both your heads. If anybody sees Adrian or Brian using WooCommerce in any way, contact me.
That's not fair. I have a WooCommerce integration. I have to use WooCommerce in order to develop it, by the way, which was a much more difficult experience than it was developing our integration with EDD, just for the record. But I can't take that bet because I have to use WooCommerce as a necessity of providing my products.
I will take that bet. You will never see me using it.
Sounds good.
Good. Before we wrap up the show, me and Spencer are doing a free webinar on Tuesday. You'll be probably listening this on Monday. So tomorrow, if you're listening on Monday, it's the 2nd of June at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Me and Spencer, like I say, are going to be doing a free webinar about building modern funnels using launch flows and WooCommerce and Animator to build the kind of funnels for yourself or for your clients. It's going to be, we've had a lot of people sign up. I think it's going to be a blast. If you want to join us, you can go to the WP-Tonic website. In the top navigation, there's a button that says free webinar. You click it and you can sign up for free. And like I say, you'll be sent a link and you'll be able to join us and ask questions of me and Spencer. I'm not sure you can.
I think that's the benefit too, is that there's of course going to be a replay. The benefit of attending live is twofold. First of all, it's not like you're going to get spammed, but if you have an interest in this topic, it's about customizing your, unfortunately for Brian and Adrian, your WooCommerce checkout experience. But good for Adrian and maybe Brian too. We're going to talk about integration with your favorite CRM like Groundhog, Lifter LMS, WP Fusion, essentially the stack of things you need to build a modern online business, but to give you that same experience that you otherwise might feel overwhelmed by when you walk into the Home Depot of WordPress. And we'll do it in a way that if you attend live or say you're interested live, you'll get to ask reasonably free questions as far as time is concerned, because we'll have a Q&A session. And otherwise, there will be a replay. We'll at least know that you want the replay if you just throw your name in the hat.
There will be a replay. So, my beloved panel, Adrian, how can people find out more about you and the Hulk?
So you can go to groundhog.io for our core product, which is CRM and marketing automation for WordPress. If you are looking to replace something like MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, and Fusionsoft with a really awesome WordPress solution, that's groundhog with 2gs.io. And you're more than welcome to hook that up with our new transactional email service of choice, which is, of course, mailhawk.io.
Yes. And Spencer, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
Probably launchflows.com, or you can find us on that Facebook group where it's pretty active about the same topic. So facebook.com groups, launchflows.
And Stephen, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
Head over to zipfish.io and you can learn about how we make WordPress fast by optimizing both the server and the code on your site.
That's great. And Brian, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
The best place is probably just forgemedia.io. So you can see what plugins we have. Also my blog's on there too. So, and also on Twitter, you can find me. I pretty much live on Twitter. So.
All right, there we go.
I don't know if that'll be around much longer with everything going on, but I'm gonna use it while I can.
Yeah, you got to. You never know, do you? You know, as things are going. We'll be back next week with a great roundtable panel, some great stories, a way to start your weekend in a great way. We'll see you soon, folks. Be back next week. Bye.